Hey guys, Liana here. It is Wednesday and I'm playing The Long Dark. I've just decided to play this game all week because I love it and it's a really good backdrop for conversation because the sounds are so amazing. It's some of the best game sound I have encountered in a really long time. Dave Chen, you are a genius, all the ways back to Baldur's Gate. I don't remember if he did Baldur's Gate or Baldur's Gate 2. But anyway, there are visual details as well in this game that I absolutely love. And I wanted to show you one of them. Look at this bathroom! Look at this! Now, normally I'd go, oh, that's terrible. But I have seen bathrooms like this in Canadian cottage country. It's just one of those details that if you've ever been up in these very elaborate cottages that look more like houses, this is what they look like, and this is glorious. Little bit of Canadiana here. And if you go into someone's house and you see a picture of wolves like this, every person I have ever seen with something like this has either been incredibly oversensitive or insane. Not saying all people with wolves on their wall are like that, just the ones I've met. You notice how I did that? I said, in my experience, it has been like this, but I'm not saying that means that there is a wonderful thing. And that's what I'd like to talk about today. The increasing march towards dealing with things through outrage, even though outrage never solved a thing. And I don't care what your position is on a given issue, because in most positions, there are points to both sides, right? But we can't talk about those points and not necessarily change anybody's mind, just learn from each other. We can't do that if everybody is constantly losing their shit at looking to outrage each other. And I'm lost, I realize. This is a problem with starting this game after, being away from it for a while. You lose your bearings, because losing your bearings is part of the experience. But it's not necessarily a good thing when you first start up. I think I know where I am now. Stay away, wolf. And sorry if I'm a little bit sniffly today, guys. I don't know what's going on. I'm getting an attack of summer allergies, and it's not the prettiest thing in the world, I recognize. But this is the thing about daily YouTube. You don't always get me at my best. And that's sort of how I feel about this latest internet kerfuffle about this reporter who, a guy at some sort of music festival, kissed her and then took a selfie, and she went to the cops and the internet exploded. Now, he subsequently apologized for his conduct. He came forward, identified himself, and apologized for his conduct. But the internet is apparently still going crazy on the reporter, the female reporter. And also, apparently, there are people who have been freaking out regarding the guy, too, claiming he should be put in a sex offender database. Now, both of these things are ridiculous. They're ridiculous. This guy is... Where do I begin on this? Okay, let's start with the guy first, because this should be common sense. A sex offender database is for a sex offender, okay? Some will say what he did was a minor form of sexual assault. The problem with sexual assault is the legal definition of sexual assault and the how do I put this? The activist overreaction definition of sexual assault are not the same thing. The bar is much lower with some, college campus groups and things like that. And And this is where we get into this Orwellian battle of words that's been going on, right? I mean, this whole idea that if you can control language, you can control people's thinking. And this is something obviously I'm very curious about, because I have never found that not having a word for something affects the way I think about something. I just make up a word when I don't have a word that will do. That's my style. But apparently, there are other people that need specific words to think specific things. And so we get into this, how dare you call me this? Instead of actually examining the behaviors and trying to figure out what the, correct, the most appropriate, I will say, thing going forward is. And that's very unfortunate, because that doesn't help anyone, does it? So, whether or not you think that this guy is some sort of predator, I don't quite know why you'd think that, but whatever. Is society served by putting him in some sort of offender database? No, that's not what these offender databases were designed to do. Trust me. I used to work clubs. If every guy who couldn't keep his hand to himself at a club, or every woman for that matter, women are just as bad as men in that particular setting. But if every person who did that at, say, a nightclub was put in some sort of registry, those registries would be ballooning, and they'd cease to serve their purpose as something useful to police and communities. And so I obviously think that this idea, put him in the sex offender database, is silly. It's a talking point, right? This whole what we're dealing with is basically the all rape is rape movement, and I'm all for that in theory. I don't like it when people take it too far, and I'm just checking my gear here, right, guys? Because there's not enough. I don't have enough for killing the day, and that I'm gonna move later. But now we get into the rest of the story, for lack of a better term. So I don't think this guy is a serial predator, obviously. And I don't think that he should need to be a serial predator to discuss what he did and acknowledge that what he did was totally wrong. Okay, it was just totally wrong. And I think this is one of those things where if you haven't been in that situation and you haven't actually done on-camera work, it can be difficult to understand why some people are having the reaction that they are. Explain it. As someone who has done precisely those kind of throws and has had people act like idiots and has just had sort of a falling down moment and went, no, keep your friggin' hands to yourself. And it's disturbing to me that there is any doubt in anyone's mind that this reporter had the absolute right to do what she did. And I'm not saying the name of the reporter has had enough grief, and I'm sure she just wants it to all go away at this point. That's not the point of this discussion, because this scenario has happened to numerous reporters in numerous settings, And I'm sure that some men have gotten it to speak out about it, and that's not right either. Right? So let's just take the gender out of this, because that seems to just freak people out, and then everybody loses the plot, and that bugs me, because what we have here is a fairly simple situation where someone is not being able to do their job because some asshole came by and like ruined their work for their own amusement. That's what we have here, and that is a dick move, okay? And I hate the fact that dick move is gendered. I can't help it. Like I said off the top, don't be so afraid of words. So that's a very simple breakdown, but there's more to it than that, because people are like, why did she go to the cops? Well, unfortunately, nowadays, people don't take it seriously until you go to the police. It's not real unless you went to the cops. And that has been a development over the last little bit that has bothered me as someone who is acutely aware of the limitations of involving the police in matters that should be solved by the people in your life, right? This should be a lot easier than it turns out to be. Go away, wolf. Go away. Go away. Go away. Stupid wolf. So, go away. Go away. Go away. I'm gonna go away. And this is a real issue societally now, that the police are having to get involved because the people around an individual don't listen to that individual for 5 minutes and figure out, the best course of action based on the individual circumstances affecting that person. We have become so callous with each other and so unwilling to talk to each other as human beings and figure it out for ourselves. Apathy has gripped social groups so badly that, sorry, wolf, had to be done. And now I get into the problem of don't want to waste. Don't waste, wolf.
Made it through another night.
So we're going to harvest, even though this throws me off my game plan. The fun in this game is that man plans, game laughs, or woman plans, game laughs. And now we build a fire to cook the meat, or else it goes bad really, really fast. So as I was saying, should it have been something in a perfect world that required police intervention? No. In this world, do I understand why she went to the police just as sort of a procedural thing? Yes, I do. Because, unfortunately, people don't take you seriously now until you go to the cops. And it is a waste of police work. Now, it's possible that they were just trying to find the guy to find out what exactly happened. That happens. That absolutely happens. And the reality is, for the people that have flipped out on this woman, and I had one person on Twitter insisting that this reporter must be mentally ill because her response was not rational. And not rational when it comes to emotions drives me absolutely crazy. And this is another problem with our modern way of not solving problems. Because that's really what this is. All this outrage stuff is just, in real terms, an avoidance of dealing with a fairly potentially, serious issue. And serious in terms of physical well-being, no. No one is saying that reasonably someone should fear for their lives because a guy came up and kissed them on the cheek. No one is saying that. okay? What does become an issue is what happened to me in television is you just hit the point where you are so tired of companies not getting security for these events and being more concerned about costs than the people who work for them. You get so sick of that you say, screw you, television, I'm going to do something else, and I'm going to do something where I have more control over the conditions and I have more ability to decide for myself what I'm going to take and what I'm not going to take. And that's why people are leaving television for the internet. It's just for all the problems of the internet. It is a more open medium. There are fewer gatekeepers, and so the exploitation becomes much less soul numbing than conventional television. And I say this as somebody who's worked in both. If I can avoid it, I will not go back to TV. The only reason I would go back to TV is if I needed the money. And the reason I will say I will never go back to television is because I don't know, I might need the money at some point. That's just the reality of the business I work in. And that's the thing that I think is very, very important to understand about media, right? Media is the art of, Loki, of pretending to seem like you're in control when you're really not. And that's the thing I think people miss, that they see somebody and they seem to be having a great time and everything seems to be just hunky-dory. And the reality is they're having a really crappy day and they're sucking it up and doing what they have to do. And that is the reality of working in media. There are certain shows I used to do I can't watch, not because the show wasn't great. They're some of the best shows I've ever done, ironically. But I know how rotten I was feeling in that instance, so I just can't watch it. It reminds me of a really bad time. And so to the people that are insisting that this reporter overreacted or is somehow mentally or emotionally unstable, this is one of those moments where don't judge someone until you walked a mile in their shoes, for lack of a better term, to use the cliche. Just don't judge someone unless you really understand what they have to do for a living. Because what she has to do for a living involves some pretty idiosyncratic things that the vast majority of the population does not understand. And no one's to blame for that. Though I realized about 3 years into a career in entertainment that the reason, if you're lucky, you get paid for what you do is you do something that other people can't do. You do something that other people don't even understand. The perception is that anybody can do television. It's not so. You know, and when I say television, I also mean videos of a particular format that's standing up in a crowd scene and giving a report. That's what I'm talking about. And here's some things that you may not realize about that particular scenario that I just gave you right there. First of all, by the very nature of the way the shots are composed, it's a very socially artificial experience. You are facing away from a crowd. Your back is to them. And that is in itself completely unnatural, and it can feel very strange and very off-putting. And so that it sort of gets the adrenaline going. It heightens your senses and your awareness of things. And the other thing that I think people don't really realize is that production teams are often not kind to the on-air personality. For some reason, directors or producers decide to take out their bad day on talent sometimes. And so they'll ream you out and say really nasty things to you, and then you have to go and perform, and then they'll make you cut because you're not smiling enough. I'm not kidding. This has happened to me numerous times. And that's why in a lot of the better film schools, they force people who want to be directors to do on-camera performances. They utterly stink at it. But the point is, you have to understand what it's like. The thing is, they don't do it enough. I think that, how'd I end up here? Oh, I went the wrong way. Oh, no, I didn't. But, you know, they don't do it enough. They do it once or twice, and they think, oh, now this, you know, punk-ass kid has the gist of it. They won't treat their talent badly. No, it's not the same doing it a few times when that novelty is still there and when it becomes your job that you do day after day after day after day after day. The I'm on to TV phenomenon wears off and you're left with the realities of the job. And some of them are extremely cool. I mean, working in television, I got to see things and experience things I otherwise never would have, and I'm very grateful for that. On the other hand, you are, as I was saying before, put in a lot of unnatural, vulnerable places that film recognizes is unnatural and, you know, and potentially rattling. TV, for some odd reason, just thinks, I'll go out there and do it. Now, this is in part because, to be completely honest, I hate it when that happens. What happened there is the wind kicked up and I lost my fire. Suck. But, you know, for some odd reason, TV is, just suck it up. TV has this conceit that it's fast, go, and it likes to act like it's tougher than film counterparts. And that, you know, it can be a blessing and a curse. It's really not, to me, neither film nor television is better or worse than the other. They're just sort of different beasts. But, you know, there's this constant back and forth because for a long time, film was considered the superior medium. You weren't really a success if you just worked in television. Now that's changed, but there are still some people who they want to do film because the money overall is better. Although, you know, actually TV, unless you're a big star and have a savage lawyer, the money isn't as great as a lot of people think it is. But you make a living, so there's really nothing to complain about. But that's the other thing is the reality is that, how do I put this without making people freak out? You know what? People are going to freak out no matter what I say on this issue. So, and I know that's a bad way of going in, but in this case, it's just true. The minute you start recognizing that there are differences in perception that people have between, you know, male reporters and female reporters, people start freaking out and things get unpleasant. So I'm just gonna say it. Their TV stations like to keep talent afraid. They like, and this is true of all media. There's the reality that, well, if it doesn't work out, we're just gonna cancel your show. We're not going to invest in talent. We're not going to find something else for you to do unless you've got a relative in a power position in the company, because let's face it, nepotism is real. So if you got a connection, they'll move you around. If you're just trying to get by based on merit, likelihood is you'll just be out the door unless you can hustle and fluke out, you know, a brand new idea. But usually it's just like, well, it didn't work. And they don't examine why it didn't work. The station doesn't necessarily take any responsibility for something not working because they didn't promote it. It's just, well, people weren't interested. There's still this silly perception that people will just find things. And that's not so. Marketing, if that were so, if people just found programs or found products, well, a lot of marketing advertising people would be out of jobs, wouldn't they? Because they're not necessary if that were true. But it's still a perception. And crap, I forgot to boil water. That ain't good. Oh, this is a fun thing I might be able to show you guys. You can drink from the toilet in a pinch. And I'm in a pinch right now, so I'm drinking from the toilet. Ew. But, so there's this constant fear that you are going to get unceremoniously fired at the end of your contract. And it's absolutely possible. It's not like another sort of job where there's an HR department and there are company protections. No, it's totally, you are yesterday's news. They're looking for a change and you can be out the door like that, like ridiculously fast. Okay. And so that is a constant awareness. And so if you've had somebody derail your broadcast too many times, you start becoming a liability to the station. If the station determines you're a target for prank, they don't have to say that's the reason they're getting rid of you, but that's the reason they got rid of you. And the problem with TV is it's inherently a dishonest medium because they avoid conflicts. It's just true. People will fight through lawyers and then golf together because everybody's conflict averse. And so you will never know for sure why a station got rid of you. That leads to, I'm sure you can understand, a lot of exceptionally insecure people. And that's not because people are, they don't have a thick skin. You have to have a thick skin just to get a job in television. This default to grow a thicker skin is the silliest thing about, it's almost postmodernism in and of itself, that it's all about the feels and all about perception. It's weird. Like, you would think that this whole grow a thicker skin thing is the absolute antithesis of postmodernism, but it's really not. It still comes down to the perception of the observer. And was that too heady? Perhaps it was. But anyway, anything that comes down to you should just be able to take it, or I am outraged, or I am insulted, it's not a solid argument. You have to provide something relatively objective to explain why that perspective should be seen as relevant. And that's what the outrage culture that, is making these things like reporters' reports getting hijacked for whatever reason. So what, he kissed her on the cheek and took a selfie as opposed to, went up and punched her in the face. It still disrupted her work. And some may say, well, there's actual physical injury when someone punches you in the face. That's true. But the point is that it was intended as a disruption. People do this stuff, they throw, what do the animal activists do now? They throw powder or something on people. It ruins their clothes before a television appearance. This is a tactic, this media disruption stuff. And people are picking up that tactic without understanding what it's supposed to do. And what it does is it undermines the performer. Like, when you throw, when you throw something that on someone that ruins someone's clothes before a TV appearance, you are intending to get in the way of them making their living. There's no doubt about that. When you use, and again, people are going to freak out about this, but when we talk about objectification, when we talk about using someone as an object instead of as a person with feelings and needs, what this guy did it wasn't the kissing her on the cheek that I take issue with in terms of objectification. It's the fact that he took a selfie after it happened. That, to me, is not what people are claiming. Oh, it was a joyous, jubilant occasion and boys will be boys. No, he took a selfie. He was using this reporter to try to increase his own Q score, for lack of a better term, right? Like, that's what it is. That is what it is. And that's the part that I think a lot of people are missing. This narrative is formed that either he's the worst of the worst, or he was, oh, this poor kid who just was having a good time and we've criminalized a good time. If he just kissed her on the cheek, that would be one thing. It was the selfie that made me think, no, there's more to this, and she has the right to be upset. But we're never going to be able to have a proper, real, meaningful discussion about this issue or any other issue involving a man and a woman in conflict right now because of the outrage warriors. And if you got really emotionally invested in this, and you are not someone who had a similar experience on either end, I mean, this guy at this point is as much grist for the mill as she is, right? Neither of these people are people anymore. Neither of them are. They are now tools for two factions in a culture war to score points. So now they're both objectified. And even though the guy tried to do the right thing and apologize, that no longer matters because it's no longer about him.
Wow. Looks like I survived.
And it's no longer about her. It's about the war. And this is the problem with this culture war, is it actually obliterates sense. It obliterates meaningful dialogue, and it obliterates our ability to actually learn from these interesting case studies of what is appropriate behavior in the modern world. And I wish that it didn't happen for numerous reasons, but the biggest one is that if we actually look at it from a compassionate, moderate perspective, it's very interesting. It's very interesting how much we take for granted societal assumptions. And that's where I'm going to leave it now. It's a shame. And if you're still fighting with someone or anybody or whatever about this, I'm asking you now politely to stop. Because nothing is gained, and these are people's lives that you're batting around like a cat with a mouse. And he's apologized. She's accepted the apology. That should be the end of it. If the police decide they still want to press charges, which is highly unlikely given the circumstances, but if they decide they want to press charges, that is up to the police. No amount of screaming and yelling at this point is going to change what the cops do from here on in. So there's no point in screaming and yelling. At this point, it's up to the police to decide whether or not this is something they want to prove. And then, we may get another chapter here. We may not. But it's time will tell. And what a lot of these, how do I put this? What the outrage does in a lot of these circumstances is denies patient the time to come to a sane, logical conclusion that works for that situation exclusively. And that's the real shame. But I need to come to a conclusion now because I'm over a half hour. But hopefully you guys liked this little snippet of The Long Dark as well. We shot some wolves. We skinned some carcasses. We survived weather. And this game's really awesome. And I'm happy to play it while I talk because, first of all, it's a nice zen background and the noise doesn't get involved, but you guys can actually hear the game audio. But also, it's indie done right. I think, yes, they're all AAA people doing an indie project, but I think that's okay. I think that that's a viable model, and we shouldn't dump on it just because it's not true indie, right? They took a big risk, and they have funding because they wanted to make the game they wanted to make, and I think that should always be rewarded because if developers aren't making the game they want to make, what game are they making? All right, guys, thanks for listening. Please subscribe if you like what you heard. Thank you.